Here we go. So we're starting to record right now. So John, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome to the September 2020 meeting of Northern Virginia Modelers. Our next monthly meeting will be on the 7th of October, a Wednesday. The tips and share meeting for September will be on Wednesday, the 16th of September at 7 p.m. Link will go out. Chris will send it out, what, a couple of days ahead of time, Chris?
The day before, yeah.
Yeah. And what we'd like to do is solicit ideas for topics for that meeting. We will put out some topics that we would like to discuss at the meeting for the tips piece of it. For the share piece, we want to maybe put together a PowerPoint of what people are working on. So if you want to, we'll put this in an email and send it out. But just to give you a heads up now, we will put out a call for pictures, maybe up to 6 pictures, which would be 6 pictures of the same subject or 6 pictures of 6 different subjects. Whatever you're working on, you got on your bench and you would like to talk about, and you'd send them to me. My address will be in the email that we send out. We'll put together a PowerPoint and we'll go through the pictures at the meeting and allow people to ask, questions about what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, whatever. And I think that's probably, we're going to try and make that more of a regular part of the meeting, the tips and share meeting. The only thing I want to talk about tonight on shows is the 2021 Nationals. For those of you who don't know, it's going to be in Las Vegas in 2021. I think it's the 18th of August to the, whatever, the 22nd. And the rooms at the special rate of $89, the block of rooms is sold out, but I just checked 20 minutes ago and they still do have rooms. It's at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas. They still have rooms for $117 a night, which is still a pretty good rate. It's not as good as 89, but they're totally sold out. They sold out 2,400 room nights. So
good
for like still a year away. They've already got those sold out. So hopefully it'll be a pretty good Nationals. I know everyone's going to be jonesing for one after 2 years. In 22, Omaha is going to have it. For those of you who don't know, I think most of you do know this. And then 23, it's San Marcos gets their mulligan, so they get the show back for 23. As we discussed earlier, tonight's presentation is Dana Bell, and he's going to talk about U.S. Navy aircraft camouflage 1934 to 1941. Do we have any new members tonight?
I just Scott from Niceville, Florida.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Scott, and what you like to build, and anything else you want to say?
I'm pretty much into 48 scale airplanes right now, but I've done ships in the past and 72nd scale pretty much prior to getting older and needing a bigger scale. But yeah, 48 scale.
Okay.
And I did a to me is P-38 recently, so that's the latest thing I've done.
All right, make sure you go up on the website, and there's a link up there to join the Google groups, and that way you'll get the notifications for the meetings and any special notifications that go out.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
John?
Yes.
I didn't introduce myself at the last meeting. I will briefly. My name is Art Loader. I'm an IPMS member since 1964. Jim Moss and Steve Zaloga and Dana and I and a couple other guys founded IPMS Northeast New York in the 1970 period. And we have been going a small friendly group ever since. I'm really impressed to be in this, frankly, rather impressive company, because it's an organization larger than I've ever experienced before.
All right, well, welcome aboard, both you and Scott. Anyone else?
Can you hit those dates again for the Zooms?
Okay, yeah, let me see. 7 October, and as long as we're doing the virtual meetings, it's going to be the first Wednesday of the month. So the first Wednesday of October is the 7th. And then the third Wednesday of the month is the tips and share. So for September, it's the 16th of September.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You got one more new guy to introduce himself. I'm Bill Chadwell, not really a new member of the group. I've joined during the plague time. This is my first meeting. Just getting back into the hobby after several decades break. I like to do just about everything: ships, armor, aircraft. Right now I'm on a heavy armor kick, and I'm going to run that until it runs out, and then we'll see what's next. But anyway, glad to be here.
Thanks, Bill. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, that's all I've got. Chris, you got something?
Oh yeah, actually I've got quite a bit this time around. One of the things I'm going to launch is I'm going to do a poll for everybody, so you'll be able to respond to the poll on screen. And this is about the tips and share meeting. It's something that John had just mentioned. Wanted to get your ideas of what are some of the topics you want to see to be discussed. For the tips and share, we usually try to at least kick off with a couple different topics just to get the conversation going, you know, share ideas about how we do things. And then after that, you know, we do the share part, you know, what are you building, and, you know, show off kind of what you're doing there. So, you know, these are just some of the ideas that we'd like to see, you know, what are you interested in, kind of thing. And you can pick more than one.
Can I pick all of them?
You can pick all of them if you want, Tom, just for you. I should have put a Tom button and said all of the above.
There you go.
So yeah, please take a look at that. As I mentioned before, briefly before I think some folks came on, Hagen, sorry, God, I cannot get that right. Hagen has gotten back to us. If you missed the meeting last month, what you missed was a terrific presentation. Hagen's got a new book out, and he used some of the materials from that book in the presentation. Excuse me. So we need to make sure we had approvals, but anyone who missed the meeting, or if you want to see the meeting again, we do have it recorded. I'll post a message on Google Groups, but just respond back to me if you want me to send you the link, and I'll send you the link where you can replay the meeting. Please don't repost the link. Don't record it or anything. Just play it for your own personal use. If you do that, that would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, we're gonna see if we can't start, you know, posting, or at least making available the replays of the meetings, so that, you know, people who either missed the meeting or, you know, you attended the meeting but you want to hear something again, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So, all right. So about half of you voted so far. So if you could, you know, just let us know what you're interested in, and we can better tune some of the meetings to what, you know, what you want to hear about. Actually, this is your opportunity to kind of get in there and let us know what you want to see. I'll keep this open for just a little bit longer. A little later, I've got another poll about the virtual meeting itself. Again, try to get your input and see what you guys think. Has anyone not voted that wanted to vote? Because if everyone's voted, then I'll go ahead and close it.
I'd like to vote. This is Alex. The submit button, though, is grayed out on mine, so I don't know.
Scroll down.
Scroll down. Got a question to answer. Oh, okay.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, there you go.
Having some difficulties.
And until you answer that last question, it'll stay grayed out.
If I may add something,
Yeah, Curtis.
in regards to nippers and cutters and clippers. So I had tried Hobbyworks and they have very thick sprues. So I used a plier just to get the item off the sprue so that I wouldn't bend it. And then I would try to use a fine nipper. But in going to one of the sites recommended, you know, on the, through the chatter, I saw this one guy said, well, we have different plastics and different thickness of sprues. And is there such a thing that one nipper does all sprues, or you need a bigger one and then for the finer cut? Because he was talking about antennas on heavy sprues from this manufacturer in England. So that's something to think about. I know if I'm working Hobbyworks, I cut with a plier, then I try to fine tune it. If I'm doing Revell and I haven't built, I've started, but that's the other problem. I won't get into that other problem, but you know, I try and then something comes up, but I don't find one nipper works all.
Yeah, and so looks like Dick's got, Dick, you got something you're sharing for us here, or is that just an accident?
Just fun.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll shut that off. Yeah, definitely, Curtis.
Yeah. Curtis, just real quick. These two will do anything you need from Xuron, XURON. They're not cheap. One will do photo etch, one is sprue. So you get these two, that does everything.
Yeah, somebody mentioned Tamiya nip as being the best. Now, I don't know if that's just talk or
This has been around for everybody forever, and they're really, really good. So I can't speak to Tamiya, but I would go for these.
Well,
I didn't know there was one for photo etch. I'm going to have to get that one.
Yeah,
I've got those.
Very good.
Definitely a topic I think we'll probably try to pull up at this month's tips and share, because I've got the same set that Mike, I actually picked it up in Telford.
Yeah, the photo etch one is the darker blue one.
Yeah, very, very fine. Okay, so here's the results of this particular poll. So working with photo etch, and most of you have attended a tips and share meeting, so thank you very much. But you kind of see the range of responses there, but
I can't.
Not seeing anything, Chris.
Not seeing anything.
I'm
Yep,
sorry,
y'all.
I didn't hit
Oh, there
the
it is.
share results button. There we go.
Boy.
well, I'll shut up next time.
No. Good. You're right on topic there. That's the whole idea. And in the tips and share meetings, that's exactly what we talk about. So that's perfect.
Looks like photo etch is the big one.
Chris, when you get ready to do the photographing model ones, I've got a canned presentation ready to go, so you can count on me for that.
Perfect. Yep. Actually, I had you in mind exactly for that.
Okay.
So yeah, we got some good stuff there. So, alrighty. So that's what I had for now. Let's see if I could get just a couple more minutes of your time before we kick off. This is about the virtual meetings and kind of getting your feedback on it. We've had some pretty positive feedback, which is really nice to hear. But you know, what about the meetings is it that you really like? And then about the replays, you know, if it were available, you know, would you watch it if it was available? So it's again kind of getting your feedback on how do you take the meetings and what works for you and maybe what doesn't work for you. So okay.
Oh, I made a mistake when I said Hobbyworks. It's Game Workshop. Their sprues for the various models, figures, they're like 2 inches thick. Not really, but it's Hobby Game Workshop. Sorry, it's not Hobbyworks. It's Game Workshop. Very thick screws.
Game Workshops. Okay.
Sorry.
No. Good stuff.
Actually, have you tried there's a God Hand nippers from Japan? They're supposed to give you like perfect clean cuts.
I use the God Hand. Oh, wait a minute, hold on.
They're kind of pricey though.
Yeah, that'll be one of the things that comes up, because I did some research as well on some of the different cutters and nippers and things. And so that's why I mentioned, that's why I put it in, because I've seen a lot of different responses about it, and I've seen a lot of people have different kind of their own opinions about things. So I wanted to hear what everybody else is doing. All righty. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. And this time I'll actually share the results quickly. So connecting other members, definitely the big benefit. The program's a big hit as well. See what everybody else is doing. That's terrific. And then actually, when you look at between yes and depends upon the program, that's what, 97% of people said they would watch a replay depending upon the subject. So, okay, that certainly helps a lot. Really do appreciate your feedback there. So, okay.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question.
Yeah, Art.
Would I be able to share program content with other members of my chapter?
So what I'd really like you to do, if they're interested in seeing it, have them email me so that we can just kind of keep track and see who's interested in it. But yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to share with you other members of your chapter.
Good, that's sensible.
Thank you.
I understand I understand the issue. It's a delicate situation.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that, for example, Hagen's presentation has proprietary content, from his book. So he wants to be very careful about how widely that gets spread. So that's just why we want to know kind of who's interested.
Amen.
Okay, thank you much. Okay, John, that's it for me. Sorry to take up so much time, but guys, I really do appreciate your input. Thank you.
Tim, you got anything?
I just want to say for the people that are signing on for the first time, one of the things that our chapter does is we subsidize IPMS memberships. If you want to join IPMS, or when it comes time to renew, if you go to our website and fill out the form that's on the website for renewal, you pay me, or you pay our club, $10 for each year you want to join or renew, and then we will pay the rest of it. If you go out, fill out that form, and then send me an email, and my email address is on the form, I'll send you back my mailing address, and then you just send us a check, or send me a check made out to Northern Virginia Modelers for either $10, $20, or $30, and I'll submit that then to National, and either get you a new membership or renew your membership for a lot less. So for a 3-year membership, instead of paying $86, you'd pay $30. So that's one of the things that this club does. And we'll be more than happy to subsidize your membership in IPMS National. And that's all I've got.
All right, thanks a lot. Walter?
Contest is looking good tonight, but I also want to let everybody know, in case you have not heard, Telford is canceled for this year. So people can start getting ready for next year's show on that one. But they've had to cancel because of the whole pandemic.
Unfortunately.
Wonder how much luck I'll have getting my money back from United.
I don't know.
Tom, I already went through this. Right now, it's if you cancel now, it's too early, because they're assuming that they could break whether Telford happens is irrelevant to United, right? So if you cancel now, they're assuming that the 14-day quarantine could go away, and there's no reason in, to their mind, that you couldn't go. They're not going to accept the reason that Telford was canceled, because all they know is you had a ticket booked to England. So what I did was I just took it as an e-credit towards next year. Just leave the money in the bank, and when you get ready to book for next year, you can use it again.
Okay, I was thinking about doing that.
Yeah, that's what I did.
All right. I can't believe United doesn't know all about scale model world, but okay.
They could care less.
Okay, no more United Airline models for anybody.
Tom, you got anything?
Not big enough.
I do not.
Okay,
As
I'd
usual.
like to open it up then to the membership. Has anybody got anything they'd like to talk about, or anything they know that's going on that they think we should all know about? Anybody?
Oh, one more thing I might add, getting back to Telford again. If you have any intention of going next year, I would wait till like the 10th or 11th of November. And then if you intend to stay in that Premier Inn, it's right between the shopping center and the conference center, on roughly the 10th or 11th of November, go ahead and book that, because that is going to fill really fast.
Yeah, that's what
You
I'm going to
can't do it before then. They won't accept it. Has to be a year out.
Okay.
Already got it on my calendar.
Say again?
Already have it on my calendar to do that on like 11 November.
Yep.
Has RightCon been canceled? That's in November.
What con?
RightCon up in Ohio.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
It's supposed to be in November, I think. So far, their website says they're still going through with it.
Joey. The dog says no.
Yeah, the dog says no to a lot of things. That's why I'm keeping on mute.
Anyone else got anything?
Undercast removal is officially.
One quick question.
Sure, go ahead. Yes?
Yes?
Okay.
Art, is that you talking?
Yes. One quick question. I have been in touch with the local air museum, which is in receipt of the surviving celebrity sports C-130. And I have been trying to guide them into helping with their restoration. If there's anybody at all who knows about this aircraft, please drop me a note at my email. You can find that from, well, Mike, if nobody else.
What C-130 was that, Art?
The celebrity sport, the Iran
Credible
rescue
sport.
aircraft.
Credible.
Okay.
Sport. Credible.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's credible sport. Credible sport.
I have a bunch of photos I took down at Macon at Warner Robins, 15, 18 years ago, back when it wasn't so decrepit, but that's about it.
Anything you might have would be helpful. The museum here took possession of the aircraft about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and I've been trying to help them along. I don't truthfully know. They've got an airplane, but I don't know how much of the background material and the restoration stuff they actually have. So
Did they contact Lockheed to maybe help?
I don't know. I apologize. I've been sort of outside this. There's a new book out which has an article on the aircraft, and I passed that on to them, and I have not had a lot of response back. So, and I'm sort of an outsider here trying to toss information to them. Right.
Is that the book that covers the entire thing from planning all the way to the repercussions?
No, unfortunately, it is of all things the new secret projects, American Heavy Lifters 1973 to 1, which has 2 pages, a photograph and a nice drawing, and I almost suspect that's all they've got. They may not even have that. I just don't know. Sorry to waste your time.
No, not a problem. That's what we're asking for, is just people to talk about whatever they think we should know about, or anything that's on their minds. Just open it up to the membership. So, anyone else before we start the presentation?
Real quick, Art. It's called Credible Sport, or excuse me, Phoenix Rising. Doesn't have much on the, you can't really get it on the, because of the background. There we go. And it's a Phoenix on an orange cover. That's on the entire mission, but there's not much in there in terms of photos or anything. But they might have some names that you might be able to track down in there.
Phoenix Horizon?
Phoenix Rising by Colonel Nightingale.
Sorry.
Yeah, Phoenix Rising, Colonel Nightingale. And it's just recently out. Really does an outstanding job of covering everything about the entire mission.
May I have the author again, please?
Colonel Keith Nightingale, retired, and it's from Casemate, which, you know, it's over in Gettysburg, or Virginia.
Got it. Thank you very much for your assistance.
Good. Glad to help. It's a good looking, a very interesting airplane if they can get it back to looking like the original.
For sure.
I'd just like to mention one thing quickly. National Capital Model Soldier Society, my other club, still has our Zoom meetings every fourth Wednesday. My contact info is in your newsletter and on our website. If you guys want, anybody wants to join our meeting, you're welcome to it. Just send me an email and I'll add you to our link when we have our meetings. Thank you very much.
And what's your email? Just so everyone knows.
bpchasseur@comcast.net. And let's put that in your newsletter.
It's on the NCMSS website, so you can find it there if you didn't write that down quick enough.
Excellent. Okay, anyone else from any of the other clubs want to say something about your meetings? Washington Armor Club, anyone here? DC? Okay, I guess we're gonna go ahead and commence with the presentation. Could everyone please go on mute so we don't have a lot of background noise? And Dana, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's see. Who puts me on the big screen?
Hopefully you're already there. And you should be able to share as well.
Let's see, let's do share. And we go down here. Oh, come on, don't be.
There we go.
As you can tell, things are doing what they want to do, not what I want them to do. There we go. All righty.
Just checking before Dan gets started. Everyone see his U.S. Navy interwar aircraft camouflage presentation?
We were all on mute.
Yes.
Affirmative.
Yes, I can see him.
That's a big 10-4.
Yes.
There you go. All righty.
Okay.
Thanks, Dana.
Not a problem. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, you sound good.
All right.
10-2.
I'm going to give an intro because normally the folks in the chapter know how I like to do these talks, but I understand that there are folks from different parts of the country that haven't heard me yammer before. Boy, are you in for something. There are a lot of books out on Navy camouflage. Very few of them deal very much with the interwar camouflage development. The book I'm working on right now is supposed to cover World War II, and there's going to be a lot of new stuff in there. This is not to say that any of the other researchers that have written such great books have missed the point. What has happened is that the National Archives has gotten really good about declassifying and processing and describing large numbers of files that were not available years ago. And I just happened to be lucky enough to be one of the first to get into those files. Now, they include a lot of the reports that have been seen before, but the juicy stuff for me is all the background correspondence and the handwritten notes even, because that's really what puts it into perspective. It's what were they really thinking at the time and why did this happen? And quite often, a lot of things are going to have happened because people weren't thinking, they weren't communicating. All right, so let's see if, there we go. Now, most modelers are going to be happy enough to know what colors you apply to your build. You look at the picture, you've got your decals, you know what you want to apply. What you will see, though, is that the proper colors aren't always going to be coming out of a bottle of hobby paint. I prefer that what we're going to talk about right now is going to give you more options, not make you feel like you've got a wrong idea or you're doing something incorrect or, oh, don't buy that company's paint because they screwed it up. But give you the opportunity to look at paint and say, you know, that is screwed up, but I add a little gray to it or a little blue to it or whatever it is, and I'll feel happier with it. And personally, of course, I'm more interested in what they did and why, because I never seem to find much time to actually build a model anymore. And of course, as always, the big rule, don't go telling somebody they screwed up their model and put the wrong colors on it. And by the way, Dana Bell said they screwed it up. It's the last thing I like to hear. I would love to share, but you'll notice I rarely come in and will share that you screwed up a model. If you ask me what should I do or what should I have done, I'm happy to talk with you. But please, after somebody's put a lot of work into a kit, let's keep it all friendly. All right, here's pretty much where our story is going to begin. Now, it's actually beginning in 1934. This is a Martin PM2 with VP2F flying out of Coco Solo at the Canal Zone. And it all starts with this man, Rico Botta, who's born and raised in Australia, joined the Navy in 1917, became a naval aviator in 1919, and took command of VP2F in 1932. 19 January 1934, he writes to the Bureau of Aeronautics, BUAIR, and he asks for all available information on naval aircraft camouflage. While he doesn't say why he wants that information, it appears that he was preparing a surprise attack on the so-called enemy fleet for Fleet Problem 15, which was going to happen in 3 months in waters near the canal. Now, the Fleet Problem was a big war game that the Navy ran every year. And you always wanted to be on the winning side. It helped with promotions and things like that. The interesting thing is that the Bureau of Aeronautics didn't have a thing. They found some magazine articles, they found some Army reports, but nothing they had anything to do with naval aircraft camouflage. That despite the fact that during World War I, the Navy had done a lot of experimenting with their own camouflage schemes. There were a lot of things on ship camouflage, but nothing on aviation camouflage. Now, it just so happened that Charles Bittinger was working with the Naval Research Lab on ship camouflage in 1934. So when BUAIR went to the National or Naval Research Lab and asked if they had anything, they said, no, we don't, but we happen to have a camouflage expert here. Bittinger was one of those Renaissance kind of guys in my line. He trained in science and engineering at MIT, and then went straight to Paris to become a fine artist. During World War I, he worked with the Navy on ship camouflage. After World War I, he moved to Wright Field and helped the Army Air Service work on aircraft camouflage. And by 1934, he was doing scientific work on ship camouflage for the Navy. Well, the BUAIR said, we'd love to talk to you about aircraft camouflage. And being a Washington, D.C. native, on the 2nd of April, 1934, he drove across town, sat down with the Bureau of Aeronautics for the rest of the day, and they talked about everything that was going to happen and had happened and could happen in camouflage. And he just pretty much convinced the Bureau of Aeronautics that he knew enough that they wanted to hire him. Unfortunately, they set everything up for him to meet with Botha down at Fleet Problem 15. But unfortunately, Bittinger was so busy that he was unable to get off the ship he was on and go ashore and talk to everybody about aircraft camouflage. But even without special camouflage, Botha did manage to sneak 2 of his aircraft under the top cover defensive airplanes and bomb and strafe the enemy ships and carriers and everything. So his suggestion was, if we can only get the camouflage worked out, we can be even more effective. Now, what Botha did get from BuAer was a bunch of Army reports, some of which had actually been written by Bittinger, and a few commercial articles. And Botha did not worry too much about undersea or underside camouflage. He accepted that the Army, which was claiming a pale blue with purple patches along the leading and trailing edges, would be the perfect camouflage for all airplanes. This didn't matter too much to Botha because he had flying boats and they were all using water-based paints at the time, and there was no way to get underneath one of those things and paint it up with a water-based paint. So he just accepted that the Army had the right colors down, and he decided that's what they would use if they ever got around to camouflaging something. But he did begin a series of measurements of the water around the canal zone. He got one of the earliest photo exposure meters and started taking readings of all the different reflections of the sea. They noticed that the colors that seemed to work best, they took color charts up with them, and they also took watercolors and they mixed their own colors in flight to what they saw below. And they saw that a dark blackish brown, a dark green, or a dark blue would probably be the best colors. Now, these are the original color chips, and as you can see, there's very little difference between them as I scanned them. This is what he sent in for his recommendations. He was really interested in protecting his aircraft when they were low over the water or when they were parked or berthed in the water. And he wanted to have a test that ran a series of dark multicolor patterns on at least one airplane. Compare that with another airplane in a single dark color. He also wanted to do some tests of flat black. And I proposed that after he ran these tests, he'd send the reports to the Bureau of Aeronautics for their evaluation. And he also asked that Mr. Bittinger be involved. Botha was not the kind of ego that wanted to shut somebody else out. He really wanted Bittinger down there because he valued the expertise. Well, by September of '34, Bittinger had been hired by the Naval Research Lab and BuAer to do some studies and a practical test. They were going to give him $1,000. That's $250 a month for 4 months' work. They were also going to give him $200 to buy supplies. He immediately got on the train and traveled out to see Kodak in Rochester to talk about optics. He traveled on to Wright Field to spend 2 days talking to the Materiel Division about what they were learning about camouflage. Then he went to Pittsburgh. I can only guess he was going there to talk to paint manufacturers, but we really don't have any record of why he was going there. In the meantime, he had a test being run by Naval Research Lab where they painted a 30-inch dark blue-gray fuselage band on a single 03 U2. They wanted to do 2 things. They wanted to find out if the paint would simply slip off the airplane because it was water-based, and they wanted to know if putting a band on the side of an airplane like that could even be seen. They found when the airplane was a mile away, you couldn't see the band with the naked eye. They also found when it was 4 miles away, you couldn't see it with 6-power binos. So they decided that patterns really were not going to be of any use to them. The one big thing that Bittinger brought with him that nobody had thought about was actually a color standard. And he used Munsell and convinced the folks at Wright Field that Munsell was a good deal for them too. And basically what Munsell was doing was creating a series of colors. Can everybody see the my cursor on their screen? Anybody see my cursor?
No.
No, I'm sorry. Well, normally when I do this, my cursor shows up, but it's not working for me today.
I got it.
I see it.
I got it.
You got it? Okay. At the top of the screen, you see yellow. Over here, you see, where'd it go? There's blue.
Blue.
Blue, yes. And over there somewhere is red. Give me a break. There it is. There's red.
There it is.
Then between the two, you have yellow, red. And between yellow, red, and red, you've got red, yellow, red. And all they were doing was basically breaking things down. They just gave you a basic idea. Let's go back one. Oop. There we go. Back one more. There we go. It was basically giving you a series of colors. The farther you got away from the center, the richer the chroma would become. And then again, you'd have a value as for the amount of darkness that you were dealing with. Here you've got the 6 values. So this color right here, for instance, would be yellow, red. Oh, where'd it go? Let's go out here. Let's pick this one. I can't even read it on my own screen, wouldn't you know? Here we go. Here we would have red 6/4, and anyone with the Munsell chart would know that this color was red 6/4. They also ran the individual colors this way. You could see the purple, blue, red section from blue, green all the way over to red. And you would have, for instance, here you would have 5 or 8/5 for this purple, blue right here. It was simply something that the military hadn't been accustomed to. They had not been using a range of colors that you could refer to across the board. Bittinger submitted his first report in November 1934, and he set a number of rules. Now, the important thing about his report is the title, Preliminary Report on, let's back up again. Preliminary Report on Sky Camouflage of Naval Airplanes. Sky camouflage. He was only interested in making airplanes less visible from below. If you're on a ship and you're anti-aircraft, you want to have that airplane less visible. So, rule 1, the upper surfaces were to be a dark gray blue, as Munsell Purple Blue 5.2. Now, let's go back one. Purple Blue 5.2 is actually this color here. It's not really, wait a minute, where is it? It's really this color, not that dark. He was choosing a color that would blend with the blue sky. Undersides, he wanted to paint a light gray or a light blue or even a light gray blue. And he mentioned a couple of Munsells. Then vertical surfaces would be the same light color, the lightest color that you chose for what he called Rule 2. Again, I'm hitting the wrong buttons, please pardon that. Miscellaneous surfaces would be the light color of Rule 1, and again, he meant Rule 2. And that everything should be matte, not glossy. And this was news to the Navy also. He didn't want any sort of specular reflectance to show the airplane up. He produced 3 color paintings. This is one of them. He only did one of them, or one set of these paintings in color. And all the other reports had black and white photos of those drawings that he did. And he only did the drawings to show you what he didn't like. What he was basically saying, and you can see it over here, if the reader is somewhat disappointed with the effectiveness of the camouflage, he'll have received the impression we wish to convey. And again, these are the 2 paintings he did to show you that using a pattern, even a disruptive pattern, did not make your airplane less visible, it made it more visible. So he did not want any sort of patterns for his sky camouflage. In December 1934 to January 1935, Bittinger and Botha finally meet up and have to hash out how they're going to do their camouflages. There are reports in the National Archives. I found out where they are about 3 weeks ago, but I can't go in and copy them. This is the only known photo that I've been able to get my hands on from their tests. And what they decided on was a combination of what Bittinger wanted for sky camouflage and what Boda wanted to hide his airplanes against the sea. They chose a deep blue-green with a dark yellow-green for the upper surface colors. Sky camouflage would combine with that as lighter tones underneath. And best of all, there's supposed to be 24 other photos from this report. I hope when the archives reopen to be able to find and share those. Now, you'll remember that Bittinger had been talking with the folks out at Wright Field. Wright Field decided the Navy had probably figured everything out, and in their own catalog of color paints, because the Army was responsible for coastal defense, they decided that they would add the Navy's sea green color and the Navy's dark blue color, which is actually supposed to be dark blue-green, to their own catalog of colors when they had to camouflage for overwater work. All right, so February 1935, everybody gets together, BuAer, National Research Labs, or Naval Research Labs, and Bittinger as a representative of the NRL, and decide on three things. NRL produce an instruction booklet on how to camouflage your airplanes. BuAer would stock the materials and pay for the presentation of the final report. And the assignment of the report would be very similar to what had happened in the Coco Solo tests. The NRL would manage the tests, BuAer would fund and support them, and the operating forces, meaning the fleet in San Diego, would execute the tests. Handbook of Instructions comes out in March 1935. Now you realize they've only done one test, and this is how your camouflage is all supposed to be done. They codified everything they learned from the Coco Solo tests, and they standardized a pale purple blue for lower surfaces. And again, if you had a flying boat, and your flying boat was naval gray or what we would call aircraft gray, that would be good enough. They would have a pale purple blue on the vertical surfaces, and on upper surfaces, they'd have a dark blue-green for sea camouflage. Now, if you only were worried about avoiding being seen from below, you could omit the blue-green. And if you had a really large airplane and you wanted a pattern, a third of your upper surfaces could be painted this dark yellow-green. They also found that in their night tests, that a very dark blue-black was actually harder to see through searchlights than simple black paint. And they provided a series of color chips for everybody to mix things in the field. Now that in itself would prove to be a big problem for everybody. We all are modelers, we've mixed our own colors, but mixing your own colors to match a standard is not as easy as everybody believed. They would also, oh, by the way, the color drawings are in the archives, and again, I cannot get to them right now. But here's what matters. This is what's worth repeating. The standard colors are blue-green and yellow-green on your upper surface camouflage. All right, now we get to those field tests that everybody wanted to run through the operating forces. The tests were delayed until November of 1935. Didn't have the personnel to do the work. They didn't have the supplies to paint the aircraft. They painted one 3-plane section from each of 11 tactical squadrons, all of them per what they read in the handbook. That's 33 aircraft minimum, and yet we don't have a single photo of one of those airplanes yet. Each unit had to mix their own paints. Generally, the results were very poor. They were given a 3-inch by 3-inch color chip. They were given a bunch of dry water or dry paint to mix together and water to throw in there to apply it. They were also given LePage glue to add to help the paint stick to the airplanes even better. Now they found the sea camouflage was fairly effective, even though the colors didn't match very well. But they found the sea and lateral, or the sky and lateral camouflages were too dark. This was the first phase of the tests. This was supposed to be the end of all the testing, but they decided to go to a second phase. They decided that they didn't need to paint 33 airplanes in order to test it. They decided to go with 6 BFC-2s from VB-2B. They decided to lighten all of the underside and lateral colors for the second test. They decided that the first aircraft would use dark green and gray sides. The gray would be broken with white stripes on the undersides, but that airplane crashed before the test began. It was not replaced, and they did not test that scheme. So let's see what they did. Here are the drawings they did, and again, one report says enclosed are the 15 photographs of the aircraft, but no photos were attached to my copy of the report. This is similar to what airplane 1 was going to be. It was going to be the dark green, it was going to be a blue-green, and then a pale, or the pale yellow-green disrupting the upper surface colors. The undersides were going to be the pale purple-blue. The sides were going to be the gray with no tone at all. The diagonal stripes that were supposed to go on the fuselage were not actually applied to this airplane. Airplane 2, just overall pale neutral gray. And again, you'll see between these airplanes that they're concentrating on hiding the aircraft and seen from below. Airplane 3, they're trying to hide it from below. They're dappling it with blue. Airplane 5, light blue overall. And airplane 6, light blue overall with a disruptive pattern of dark blue-green stripes running up and down the sides. All right. They found that those undersurface colors were too light. So they decided to run a second or a third test, lightening up the underside or darkening up the underside colors a little bit, completely repainting all the airplanes from phase B, and testing a lighter yellow-green on leading and trailing edges of the what they actually called standard blue-green on plane 3. And they wanted to also attempt to camouflage one airplane to limit the amount of paint they had to apply to a standard airplane to camouflage without having to repaint the whole thing. They also flew the camouflaged airplanes in formation with 2 aluminum painted BFC-2s and 2 gray painted F4B4s. And here's their number 1 airplane. Again, standard blue-green. They've accepted this is the color. Gray on the sides and dapples of purple-blue across the lateral surfaces. Again, as I say here, you think the Luftwaffe invented this stuff? No, we beat them to it. Nice job of mottling, Art.
Pardon me. Sorry.
Plane number 2. Here they're going with the blue again, but they thought using a neutral gray, and of course it doesn't look neutral here because they were using water paints, but using a neutral gray sawtooth pattern, they hoped would disrupt the shadows on the sides of the airplane. Here's the airplane where, again, they're concentrating on lighter undersides, but they're using a lighter yellow-green or, yellow-green to disrupt the leading and trailing edges. And they found this to be superior to any of the other things they were testing. Somehow they never used this again, but they did find it worked better than anything else they had. They also had one airplane where they hoped by simply throwing a disruptive color across the aft fuselage, that might prove to be more effective for a variety of camouflage situations. And then there was this standard airplane where they put the disruptive pattern of gray, simply trying to cut down on the aluminum varnish and the yellow upper surfaces and the red tails. They found this was okay, but not great. The lighter gray was probably the best, a slightly lighter, well, basically a gray that went somewhere between the gray they used in phase B and the gray they used in phase C was probably best, but they never tested it. The current camouflage were just as good as, or non-camouflage colors were just as good as camouflage, except the aluminum airplanes should be dulled. And one of the proposals they had was to simply take steel wool and polish the aluminum with steel wool to dull it. Another proposal was something that some of the modelers from my generation may remember, where we were told to add cornstarch to our glossy paints before we applied them to our Airfix kits. Well, they actually did that back in the 1930s. They also said the very light and very dark tail colors, black, white, things like that, should be eliminated. And if sea camouflage is necessary, dark blue-green is what should be used. And again, the big important thing they say here is if more experiments are desired, they should be performed by an experimental unit, not by a field unit, not by an operational squadron. That if is important because by August 1936, Buer says, we're done. We got enough. And all further camouflage testing in the U.S. Navy is either for a ship or for artificial illumination, what would become Project Yehudi during World War II. And of course, we're not going to get too deep into the artificial illumination. 1939, all right, here we are. 1936, they say we're done. 1939 is the first that we start talking about camouflage again. It's almost like something happened to get their interest peaked. But so June, September 1939, they start talking about not a way to camouflage the airplane, but a way to easily cover the brighter parts of the airplane. And one thing they thought they could test was adhesive tape, Scotch tape, actually tape in different colors applied to the aircraft to see if they could cover over the squadron colors or the ship colors on the airplane. Excuse me. It worked as you might expect if you ever wanted to put tape on a model airplane and leave it there. Simply the tape came off as the adhesives dried, or in their cases as the slipstream wore them away. Okay, so seaplanes had all been assigned, I'm jumping back here just a notch, patrol planes had all been part of the base force until mid-1938. And all those tests that were run by Boda and Bittinger, all were results for base force. In mid-1938, base force pretty much got out of the patrol plane business, and all of the squadrons were assigned to scouting force. And just about a year later, in August 1939, scouting force says, we sure could use some instructions on how to camouflage our seaplanes. The information they were sent back was that dark green and dull aluminum would be the standard colors to camouflage your seaplanes. It isn't until October 1939 that the Navy even begins to consider permanent camouflage. Everything they've tested, everything they've advised as standard is water-based camouflage, usually mixed with LePage glue to help it stick, but nothing about enamel, nothing about dope, nothing about lacquer. But then, of course, just like the Army, they learned that Lockheed is delivering Hudsons. Does appear, watch this. I wonder if I can, no, I can't do it. I was hoping I could fix that. Yeah, like I said, I finished this 15 minutes before we got together. I never got the time to run in and do a spell check. But those Lockheed Hudsons were really great airplanes. And as I recall, Galland actually said, give me a squadron of Hudsons and I can beat the British. But For foreign export, they were using permanent camouflage paint. And Buair wanted more information. And that didn't mean they wanted to do it, but they wanted to know more about it. So in late December 1939, the Navy publishes tentative requirements for application of camouflage to fleet aircraft. They want to reduce specular reflection. In other words, they don't want the airplane to shine. They want to finish the undersides and vertical surfaces with non-specular aluminum. And in this case, they are talking about aluminum mixed with LePage glue and water and white paint as a temporary camouflage scheme for underneath. And of course, the standard dark chrome green on top. Now, they also mentioned that you could use dark blue or dark gray or black up on top if green wasn't immediately available. So they are definitely still hooked on the idea that green is the paint to be used. And they also want to retain the national insignia, kind of required by the conventions that we had signed in peacetime. And again, those paints are to be non-permanent. You want a paint that you can put on, and after we win the war next week, we can simply wash the paint off again. I mean, who would dare raise a fist against us? All right. In December 39, they also decide that they do need to run a new test. And they give it project number 3606. And they ask the Naval Aircraft Factory to test day sea camouflage along the New Jersey coast. They were going to use a sky blue that was mixed from ultramarine, a monastral blue. That I actually had to look up. It's an artist pigment, an organic copper-based blue. They also wanted to try a lighter sea gray. They wanted to try a sea gray that was darker than aircraft.
Dana?
Gray. Yo!
Dana, the Camel Sala. Sky blue, ultramarine is a dark blue.
Yes.
And what color is that monastral blue?
It is a medium blue. It is a blue that is, Lord, what could I describe it to? And the problem is it's a mix. So they're not actually saying, but they are talking about a dark blue here.
Oh, okay. So the sky blue is actually a dark blue.
Yes.
Okay.
Very well. When you say dark blue, if you think back to what Bittinger was talking about in dark blue, you'll know just how not dark that is. We're not talking insignia blue or anything that dark. We're certainly not talking the sea blues that came in the late 1940s or mid 1940s. But they are talking about a deep, rich blue.
Okay.
They're also talking about steel grays mixed from aluminum and lamp black and a medium blue. And in this case, they're actually talking about a dull version of true blue. So they run their tests and they decide by February 1940 that dark green is better than dark gray or dark blue. So we're still in February of 1940 talking about dark green for our airplanes. All right, one of those fleet problems comes up every year, and here we are with fleet problem 21, March through April 1940. And they decide to actually do some operational tests on the camouflages of the time. They were going to do 2 SOC Seagulls. God, I would love to find a photo of these airplanes. 1 to 3 patrol aircraft from each patrol wing, not just 1 to 3 patrol aircraft, but they're talking 1 to 3 from every patrol wing, and then 3 TBDs from VT5. Now, these aircraft were predominantly to have aluminum undersides and vertical surfaces. But the VT5 airplanes, you can see, here we go. Here's VT or 5T13. They're all supposed to have dull aluminum undersides and vertical surfaces. You can see a little bit of the tail color showing through here. And then the tops were to be the standard dark green. However, VT14, this airplane, was to have the same scheme, but with a very light mottle. You like that word, Art? Yeah, go for the mottling.
Good for me.
Light mottle of dull aluminum on the top. And of course, over here, you have 5T15, which has the same basic scheme with a heavy model of aluminum. By the way, the joke about modeling and art goes back 50 years.
Easily.
Easily. But anyway, they were evaluating not only the capability of the airplanes to remain invisible when seen from below, but would breaking up the dark green make them less visible when seen from above. Now, once they got to Hawaii, they repainted the upper surfaces completely. They took off the dark green and they repainted everything a dark gray. And then again, put varying degrees of aluminum mottling on top of each of the aircraft. Then they moved into Pearl Harbor and they repainted the upper surfaces again, now using black with varying degrees of aluminum mottling on upper surfaces. Here's 5T15, the aircraft that had the heaviest mottling. Obviously, it has been wet. It's being pulled aboard after a quick dip in the ocean. And yet, most of the camouflage paint is still there. Not all of it, but most of it is still there.
Dana, I noticed there were no under-wing markings either on the carrier.
No, this is back when camouflage was you hide your airplane completely. And they had not gotten their gear together and figured out that they still had to mark the airplanes. Okay, we're going to, there we go, jump to McClelland Barkley, another artist involved in the whole idea. He had tested a disruptive optical illusion camouflage scheme with the Army in 1938. He painted up B-18. Failed miserably. But in 1940, he approached the Army, or the Navy, saying that he would like to test the famous Barkley camouflages on Navy airplanes. And they ran those tests in September and October. And as you can see, the basic schemes were laid out for optical illusions. They had 2 buffaloes, 2 vindicators, 2 TBDs, and 2 BTs. Now the colors are, we now know what the colors were. He had a special ultramarine blue. He had a darkened version of that. He had the same neutral gray that the Air Corps was using for their temporary camouflage. He actually wrote to them to get permission to use it in the Navy tests. And he had white as his basic undersurface color. The one exception to all of that was a single vindicator.
Oh,
whoa.
Yeah.
There's a model.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it going to be fun? Single vindicator, but this particular airplane, the entire left wing was painted in standard dark green. Just a comparison between what Barkley thought would work and what the Navy already knew would work. Now, we've never found pattern drawings for these airplanes. And the reason for that is they never made pattern drawings. They sent Barkley large-scale models, probably 24th scale from what I'm gathering in the writing about the models. And he painted up these models and brought them with him so that they could paint up the aircraft. The models have since disappeared. There were a number of requests from different admirals to have the models sent to them for evaluation, and basically something looking good on your desk when they have your picture taken, I guess. These disruptive optical illusions were considered a total failure.
They're not even good disruptive patterns, in the sense that if you look at, at ships, when they camouflage ships, you did get some deception of motion and shape and stuff like that. This is nothing. This is almost like an advertisement rather than a camouflage.
Indeed.
Yeah, Dana, I was going to say, I also noticed that the entire wheel and tire are painted so that you don't see the tire on the underside of the wing.
That's right, exactly right. And as a matter of fact, that is one practice that would be carried forward into World War II, though it would be later abandoned. But that'll be another chapter in the book when I finally get it.
You know, the maximum advantage of these camouflage schemes was to fake moss out of his shoes.
And there's another story that goes way back.
Keep them in the National Archives permanently.
The story of D. Moore Macmillan. We'll have to
That's
tell
right.
you that story someday. If we have time at the end, I'll fill you in on that one. What Barclay was hoping was that was from a distance, as you approach the airplane, all of these disruptive optical illusion camouflages would confuse you enough that you would have the wrong pursuit curve. You would not attack the airplane properly. However, unlike ship camouflage, you'll notice that when ship camouflage is all that dazzle stuff, the greatest threat is from submarines or other ships firing from a distance. And the advantage was that you were always dealing with a two-dimensional target. Essentially, the two-dimensional pattern that you put on your ship made it very hard for you to tell exactly what you're looking at. Was it coming towards you? Was it sailing away from you? Was it even sailing in the other direction? Or was it sitting still in the water with a false bow wave?
Yeah.
Airplanes, you don't see them that way. You basically see a three-dimensional object with a bunch of paint on it. And every time anybody has tried to do it, the scheme has failed in nearly every test. That includes the Ferris camouflage.
Dana?
Yo.
What was the intention with this? Was it that an aircraft observing this machine in flight from above it would be confused or not, or missee it, or what?
Essentially, what Barclay was hoping was above and behind and off to a side, you would look at it and get the same confusion, that you would see the airplane passing to the left when it's actually passing to the right. You'll see that the lines that you would see that would help you understand exactly what you were looking at would all converge at different points. Let's go back to the Buffalo. Let's go this way. There we go. You can see that the lines and the circles were designed to give you a concept of where the airplane was heading, and Barclay had hoped that that concept would confuse you as to where it actually was heading. It did not do that. And again, in the Navy on ships, when the danger was from aircraft, you were no longer a two-dimensional target sitting in the water. You were a three-dimensional target with a whole bunch of really pretty paint on you, and you became far more visible, which is why the Navy would go to overall blue or overall gray when the kamikazes were the threat. It mattered who you were worried about. If you're a two-dimensional target to submarines, you want that pattern to confuse what's being seen through a periscope. If you're a three-dimensional target to a kamikaze or a Luftwaffe bomber that's sitting out over the Bay of Biscay, you want to make sure that you're invisible, not highly visible with a bunch of confusing paint.
Then from a distance, these camouflages from the air were of no value.
No value whatsoever. They made you more visible, and once you were more visible, it was very easy to figure out which way you were going.
Thank you.
Not a worry. Now, we've all heard about the green SBDs, and what I can tell you is I don't know if they were green. I believe that some of them were green, but I can't prove that. I know that Pete Bowers and a number of other folks had a picture of an SBD-2 that was supposed to be dark green. Now, for most of the period we're talking about, dark green was the standard upper surface color. Now, here's what I have got. November 1940. Commander Aircraft Battle Force, to sink us, recommends that all SBD-2s be delivered in non-specular aluminum to avoid any sort of delay. However, the Bureau of Aeronautics proposed changing those instructions to dark green over a non-specular gray instead of aluminum paint. You notice at this point, we are finally talking about permanent camouflage. We're arguing about what that permanent camouflage should be, but at least we're talking about it. So BuAer has this one idea. Comair Bat Force has a different idea, but it's the first indication that we're getting that dull aluminum is not a good idea. This is the first time that we're actually talking permanent paint, and we're talking not using dull aluminum. No matter what you do to aluminum, no matter how much you buff it with steel wool, or no matter how much, what was the powder? No matter how much powder you add to the mix, you're not going to eliminate the glint entirely. And they wanted to get a color that eliminated that glint. So it doesn't prove that they were green. However, the very next day, BuAer and the Naval Aircraft Factory begin research on permanent camouflage paints. Because even though they're saying we want you to paint them in a permanent finish, they hadn't identified any permanent paints. And that same day, the commander for Aircraft Battle Force recommends the use of a blue-gray instead of dark green. Now, there's no reason under the sun for him to say blue-gray, other than he thought blue was prettier than dark green. Nobody has run a test that said blue-gray was more effective. As a matter of fact, if you remember back to the earlier tests, every time they ran a blue, they said that it's pretty good, but dark green is better. So CNO says we're going to issue a new camouflage instruction for permanent camouflage, and it will be no later than March 1941. But 5 December, the Naval Research Lab is developing new color standards, and they're still including dark green as the new color standard and not blue-gray. So people are starting to get into a rush about developing new camouflages for their aircraft, but they're not able to communicate. And I believe that was because the internet was not working for some of these units and their email was not getting through as quickly as required.
Atmospherics again.
Yeah, it had to be that. All right, here's December 1940. This is the Fleet Air Tactical Unit out at San Diego. And they are in December 1940 actually testing their latest dull aluminum mix on an SB2U. They found it worked very well. This is a March 1941 photo, and it's not a very good photo is what it boils down to. And also it's backlit. So it's quite possible that this airplane has been repainted in light gray by the time this photo is taken. But I believe they did not repaint it. I believe we're still looking at overall dull aluminum, just backlit. And I know it's this airplane because the tactical unit, or Fleet Air Tactical Unit, only had one SB2U. So it had to be this airplane. I just don't know if it's still wearing the dull aluminum scheme.
Dana, it looks like there are two different colors on it. From the pilot's shoulder back to the observer, there's a lighter whatever it is.
Indeed, indeed. Now, if the Navy had switched over, as they would eventually, to using lacquer and dope, I would expect that the lacquer would not match the dope. No matter what you do, it's nearly impossible to get two different paints to match. The problem with that is that if they had switched to aluminum lacquer forward and aluminum dope aft, that demarcation should be occurring right here, not right here. I don't know why we're getting a shadow there or a different shade. I've seen what you're talking about, and I cannot explain it.
Good question.
It also looks like the paint's been rubbed off by the observer where he steps.
That would not be unusual, especially on a test. That well, never mind. We're not going to do that. Right.
Dana,
Yo.
before you finish, and I don't want to push it in now, but before you finish, would you comment on the paint of the aircraft on a film I guarantee 100% of us have seen, which is the Technicolor production of Dive Bomber?
I was watching that just for this whole project. I should have my notes out about the time checks and where certain things happened.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will talk about Dive Bomber in a wee bit. Okay, you've seen these photos. They're life photos. You've seen this is without a doubt, this F4, F3 is dull aluminum overall except for the tail. And as some of you have probably heard from some of my earlier talks, getting ahead of themselves, Grumman had actually painted the tails for the Navy. They painted green tails and black tails for the next 2 squadron worth of aircraft that they were going to deliver. And they said to the Navy, well, now you've just changed the contract on us. We've already painted the tails. Would you like to paint us or pay us to repaint the tails in dull aluminum? And the Navy, of course, said, oh, no, they just deliver them, not to worry.
Is that the dark green?
That's the willow green identifying Ranger.
Okay.
Yep.
So the dark green was actually darker.
It's Ranger and Wasp, right?
Nope. Oh, yeah. The black for Wasp, the green for Ranger. Yes.
Yep.
Go ahead and paint one of these up for a model meeting. I love any scheme that you can do that you can put it on the table and someone will come over and tell you, you forgot to put the chrome yellow on the wings. I just love coming up with things like this and giving them to somebody else to build, because as I've mentioned, I don't build much anymore. Just to get it out on the model table so that somebody will jump in and say, hey, you know, fella, you really ought to get your act together and study those colors a little better, which is why I ask you not to do that. But anyway, all right. December 1940, Commander Patrol Wings, which is part of the U.S. fleet, directs the Bureau of Aeronautics to paint 1 PBY, blue-gray over light gray. After all, we've already decided that's the scheme we want to use. This airplane, this PBY-4, Bureau number 1241, part of VJ-1 at San Diego, photographed on 10 January 1941. As you're reading faster than I'm talking, it is the first ever Navy airplane to be painted blue-gray over light gray. Now, not only is the scheme not standardized, but they have not yet put out color chips telling you what the blue-gray is supposed to look like, nor have they put out color chips telling you what the light gray is supposed to look like. But needless to say, since Patrol Wings Commander had decided to paint them this way, this was the perfect color scheme. All right, so what's my date here? Back. 10 January 41. We're backing up to December. All right. Now here's BuAer authorizing Douglas to paint and changing the contract to paint all their SBD2s light gray. All right, the very first light gray color cards aren't even issued until 3 days later, and there aren't many of them being circulated. BuAer begins changing the contracts, saying all of your carrier-based airplanes and battleship and cruiser-based airplanes should be painted light gray overall. Patrol airplanes will be an exception. Okay, we get 4 days later. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Commander Pat Wings decides blue-gray will be approved as the standard for all of his airplanes. Now you have to realize we have got somewhere near 40 to 45 airplanes, PBYs, that have already been painted in dark green over light gray or dark green over dull aluminum. And yet we cannot find a single photo of one of those airplanes. There are reports as each unit painted the airplanes giving you the hull number, like 12P7 or whatever, giving you the bureau number off the tail of the airplane they painted, and yet we cannot find photos of these aircraft. Driving me nuts! And as you look at this aircraft, this SBD, it's pretty clear to me that the airplane originally had been painted dull aluminum in permanent paint, then overpainted with light gray. But because you're painting one color over another, that paint is not sticking very well. It's coming off in flight. It's coming off from people standing on the airplane to maintain them. But nobody's standing back here. That's just rubbing off as the airplane squeezes through the air.
Dana,
Yo,
is this light gray the color which is, in my experience, usually referred to as neutrality gray?
it is referred to as neutrality gray. That is entirely invented by modelers. There is no color called neutrality gray. Okay, but if you're talking about neutrality gray, this is what you're talking about.
Thank you. Gotcha.
Not a worry. What has happened is you have neutrality patrols setting in around the same time the light gray is turning up. You have neutral gray in the Army, and a number of modelers back in the 1960s started putting it all together and invented the term neutrality gray. This is not that. Or it doesn't exist, but this is that. How's that? If it were, this would have been it. There we go. All right, so 30 December, Buair starts issuing orders and changing contracts. Paint blue-gray on patrol planes. They, again, have not issued the color card for blue-gray. All right, things start happening fairly quick. Yeah, notice fairly quick in the Navy means nearly 5 months later. Commander Battle Force announces that all 93 cruiser and battleship airplanes have been painted in light gray camouflage. So we know if you find an airplane that's sitting on the tail end of a cruiser or a battleship, an SOC, an OS-2U, or even a leftover O-3U, if such a thing still existed in May 41, and it's light gray, it has to be from the start date, I believe, was 23 April. So between 23 April and 21 May, the entire fleet of 93 aircraft is repainted.
Wow.
The carrier aircraft are slowly being repainted. Now we jump ahead to August, and Commander Aircraft Battle Force directs that all aircraft on carriers or on battleships or on cruisers should now be painted blue-gray on upper surfaces and sides. They do have one thing they neglect. They neglect to let Buair know that they've made this change. So Buair is busy having manufacturers crank out airplanes in light gray. The aircraft start arriving in San Diego, and they have to be repainted immediately because Commander Aircraft Battle Force wants blue-gray on the upper surfaces. By September and October, nearly every unit in Battle Force and Scouting Force has reported that they have completed painting their aircraft blue-gray over light gray. That's all the carriers, all the battleships, and all of the cruisers. So it isn't until September 41 that Buair learns that this change has occurred. And of course, by 13 October, once they've cleared up that that's really what the fleet wants, they start changing the contracts again, telling people to start applying blue-gray. Now you realize there is no blue-gray to apply to your aircraft. What they've done is they've sent out a chip telling you what the color should look like, and a rough approximation of taking so much light gray, so much insignia blue, so much insignia red, and so much white, mixing them together and applying that to your aircraft. So most of the airplanes that we have going to war in 1941 in blue-gray over light gray are some ridiculous version of what blue-gray was supposed to look like. This is 6 September 1941, a picture you've all seen before of, geez, I wrote a book on the airplane, I can't think of the name, Kingfisher, being hauled aboard Arizona. Okay, and this is what the scheme looks like. You'll notice that by this point, they have come up with how they're going to apply their national insignia. One above the left wing, just like the Army, one below the right wing, just like the Army, and one on either side of the fuselage, just like the Army. And of course, if you're part of Neutrality Patrol in the Atlantic, you have a national insignia on the nose also. You can see here that they're choosing their colors to make them less visible from a distance. Against the blue-gray, you've got black. Against the light gray, the word Arizona is in white. Here's one for you. Can anybody jump in and tell me what's wrong with this? September 1941, the Atlantic Fleet, VT-5, Vindicators, based at Naval Air Station, Norfolk.
How's that car going to take off of the aircraft carrier?
Oh, yeah, well, that's the Admiral's car. They're just going to strap it to the bottom, carry it out to the carrier for him.
I got you. Okay.
So anybody look at these Vindicators, tell me what's wrong with these Vindicators, and I'll give you one hint. It's a camouflage issue.
The wings are bent.
They are bent, and
They should
this
be
is the
blue-gray.
pylon racer
yeah.
version.
Yes.
What was the answer?
They should be in blue-gray.
That's right. The orders had come out that any airplane that had wings that folded upward like this, meaning SB2Us and TBDs, were supposed to apply the darker color to the underside of the folding wing. The idea being that on board the ship, you didn't want your aircraft camouflage making your ship more visible. VT-5 had been repainted at Norfolk, but they hadn't noticed that little part of the order. And so this is, go ahead and put that on a model table and see what you hear. You know, I'm telling you. But it's what they did. They got it wrong. And there are other pictures, of course, of VT-5 taken about 2 months later, and they all have had the underside of the outer wing panels repainted. All right, favorites of mine. This is Philippine Islands.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now, we keep seeing these photos in the Philippines, and we keep hearing that these were last-minute rush jobs because the Japanese had attacked. Well, this is October 1941.
It's a little early for that.
This is in preparation, and you can see that one of these airplanes appears to be wearing the blue-gray scheme. It's got the single camouflage star. Most of the airplanes here have got the single camouflage star, but several of the airplanes have got a multi-tone camouflage scheme, including some of the smaller aircraft. This is a much softer image. I didn't copy it myself. I'm going to go back. I've got the negative number. But this is in August 1941, anticipating the Japanese attack. And again, multicolor schemes of some variation. Here we are in May 1941, still in the Philippines, and you can see multi-tone camouflage schemes. This early, the stars are on both wings. My belief is that after many years of saying that you're going to camouflage your aircraft dark green, dark blue-green, and dark yellow-green on top, that when the Philippines began to get ready for what everyone expected was a Japanese attack on the Philippines, that is what they actually used. Now we've got oral records, oral histories from people saying, oh, we use different blue-grays, and that's possible. But if you've ever seen the waters around the Philippines, nothing's going to make you stand up more than something that's not green or brown. And I don't believe that these airplanes are blue-gray. Do I know what they were? Hell no. But I really believe that all those tests going back to December 1934 and January 1935 resulted in these Pat Wing 10 airplanes being variations of the green upper surface camouflages. I'd love to go through the records and find proof of it. And there's a good possibility that records of the USS Augusta, the USS Augusta was flagship for the Pacific Fleet at the time. And not many people spend much time looking at the, 27 feet of records of the USS Augusta in the National Archives downtown. I believe the reason there's that much paper from Augusta is because Augusta was the flagship, and they weren't recording everything about what happened on board the ship. They were recording everything that happened on the Pacific Fleet. I would love to get my dirty little hands in those files and find proof of what they were painting these airplanes.
The Asiatic Fleet,
What did I call it?
Pacific Fleet.
Thank you. Asiatic Fleet. You are right. The important thing, all those orders we were finding earlier were for the Pacific Fleet, and the Asiatic Fleet was not bound by those orders.
Dana?
Yo.
You remember Jim Moss when he did the Dutch DO-24 article?
Absolutely.
Which was operating in the same area and showed DO-24s in a kind of a mud camouflage over white?
Yep. What do they call it? Milk white and mud color were the two Dutch colors.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually found the DuPont color numbers for those paints in the National Archives many years ago. And but I've never been able to get DuPont to spring with color chips to let us know what the actual color was supposed to look like.
Dana, do you have any information on that ship? It looks like an old four-stacker that lost two.
Yeah, it's been, you can see the crane on it, and I cannot remember which one it is. The lack of a hull number means that we're not looking at a destroyer any longer. We're looking at one of the auxiliary ships for float planes. They modified a number of flush deck four stackers to act as flagships for the patrol aircraft, particularly the smaller ones.
There are some diorama possibilities for you.
Ooh-ha. All right, where are we? Okay, now, here we are, 2 days after Pearl Harbor. I did say I'd get through December 1941. And you see two very different survivors of the latest unpleasantness. One of these airplanes I could almost guarantee is blue-gray over light gray, and you can see the single star on it. However, you're looking at a second airplane, much darker, no national insignia anywhere to be seen. It is the Seagull scheme used by VP-11, devised by Lieutenant Commander Dayton R.E. Brown. Now, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how the man that designed the Brewster Buffalo suddenly found himself a camouflage expert for the U.S. Navy. And Dayton Brown indeed did become the head of the Navy's camouflage section in World War II. However, the man that invented the Brewster Buffalo was Dayton T. Brown, and this is a totally different individual, Dayton R.E. Brown. He tested two airplanes. One of them he painted black on top and white on the bottom, and came up with varying degrees of white or of gray moving down the side to have this graded camouflage scheme on the side of his airplane. The second airplane he painted dark blue on top and white on the bottom and did the same thing. He found that the black and the blue were equally effective. Neither one was particularly better than the other. However, he found that all of the blue pigments he had tested faded rather rapidly. So he decided that they'd go with the black, the gray, and the white as the scheme. And every airplane but one was painted in black, gray, and white in what was called the Seagull scheme in VP-11. This became, when Dayton Brown became head of the camouflage section, this became what they called the gray scheme, and what eventually was simplified into what we all recognize as the dark blue, the or sea blue, intermediate blue, and white scheme, the graded camouflage scheme of 1943. This is where it all began. And again, Dayton Brown, being that he's testing camouflage, did not apply national insignia to those airplanes. So, one other thing before we get to the end. The very first thing that we end 1941 with is objections from the fleet that the blue-gray that they're using on top of their aircraft is far too light, that it is not working. Not only does it fade too rapidly, but even when it's not fading, it is too light. And that is going to lead to the next chapter about the true story about blue-gray, dark blue, and light gray and white during 1942 and 43. So again, any questions, my friends? I'll stop the share.
Dana.
We'll come back to normal.
Dana,
Yo.
any comments on the film I guarantee 100% of us have seen, which is the best record of pre-war Navy aircraft in color that I know of, and that is, of course, Dive Bomber, which has a lot of weird stuff in it.
Well, guess what? I have not seen it. So
You have not seen it.
Of us.
Do we have a way of banishing people from the Zoom conference? If they
Okay.
Honestly.
And to be honest with you, this is the first time I've heard of it.
You've never heard of Dive Bomber?
Good gosh.
My
I
God.
saw it years and years and years ago, but I don't even remember it.
Well, I bought it several years ago. Fred McMurray.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but
It's
remember this,
it's
the guy that's
Warner
saying
Brothers.
this,
It's the works.
yeah, but the guy that's saying this, Don, is the only guy on the screen that doesn't have gray hair.
No, I've got them.
Even more reason to ban you, Don.
Dana,
Well, let me recommend that everybody get their hands on Dive Bomber, or just keep an eye on Turner, because they do bring it up from time to time.
Every time they run an Errol Flynn or a Fred McMurray retrospective.
Yes, and I just forgot the broad's name, and I say broad because that's how she's referred to in the movie.
Phyllis Thaxter?
Who is it?
Phyllis Thaxter, maybe?
Ida Lupino?
That's not it.
no.
Not Ida Lupino. That's okay.
No,
Go
not
on.
Ida Lupino. Anyway, it established her as a bombshell from then on.
Okay.
But long and the short, it's filmed in 1940. So you're right at that transition period. Remember 23 April, they start repainting everything light gray? Well, they started filming before 23 April. So you've got scenes of these different aircraft flying along in full pre-war colors. You have scenes of airplanes in overall light gray, newly repainted. You have one scene where supposedly Errol Flynn is flying his N3N inverted over
San Diego.
Thank you. Over San Diego, over NAS San Diego. And you can see PBYs in the background, several of which have been painted a darker color that looks to be blue-gray. The movement is so fast that you can't really tell, but most of them look to be blue-gray. There was one airplane that when I freeze frame, I could swear that airplane was dark green, but again, that's no way to prove that the airplane was painted that color. But you get there right at that period where everything is changing, and you've got incredible things. You've got after the death of a friend who went off flying when he was told he shouldn't fly anymore, and he dies, and in a somber, reflective mood, because real men don't cry, Fred McMurray wanders off to the flight line, where you have a number of PBYs that appear to be painted a very dark aluminum color, or perhaps a dark or maybe light gray color. I've not been able to get a good handle on what they are painted. They appear to also be painted a special undersurface color that was, oh Lord, I can't even remember the name of it. It was a rarely used color. It was used for less than a year as a sealant to prevent the undersides from leaking after repeated landings in hard water. And I'm guessing that what he's standing in front of for all of that 6 or 7 reflective seconds, he's busy looking into his future as an aviator. I'm busy looking at, what the hell did they paint those airplanes? It's just a really great, great scene that I want to go out and throttle the cameraman for not doing a 360 of Fred McMurray as he walks around the airplanes to get a good idea how they actually were painted. It's got a typical boneheaded spigweed plot combined with incredible photography and some really good music.
Dana,
Yo.
I got a question. Were studies ever done to validate the benefit of these things? I mean, it's a little bit like Catch-22, where a guy would schedule parades because that was his authority to schedule parades.
That's right.
You know, they had paint. They had a lot of people that they needed to keep busy. So these airplanes just kept changing color. Now, the question is, from a modeler's perspective, you've covered it. But from an operational perspective, is there any value to all of this? Has anybody ever come up and said, yeah, that gray worked, this blue didn't?
The closest is that New Jersey shore test, which was really a half-assed.
Well, I don't mean a self-test, because that's like kissing your sister. You
Right.
know?
No, the actual tests that prove what's best don't come until 1942, when Dayton Brown gets put in charge. And one of the things that's interesting, just a second, Art, one of the things that's interesting is that you remember Bittinger was put in charge of running all these early tests. Well, when the Navy gets interested in starting over in 1939 and getting a better idea what to do, Air says, well, I think it's time we get real scientists involved and stop using artists. Oh, artists! Stop using artists to help us design our camouflages. The result being that instead of the only man who's trained in optical science, Bittinger, an MIT-trained engineer scientist, they go to Barclay, who's an artist. They go to Dayton Brown, who's an artist, but a really gifted one when it comes to painting airplanes. And they abandon any use of scientific notation for the colors they're using. They don't use Moncel ever again from that point. There are a couple of times where Dayton Brown brings it up in reports, but nobody else is using it. And it isn't until they start doing serious tests in 42 and 43 under the guidance of Dayton Brown that they start to realize just how bad some of their schemes are.
What'd they find out?
They found out that white is better undersides for most altitudes the Navy was flying at. They found that a much darker color called dark blue was better for upper surface and side when you're painting an aircraft for hiding against the sea or against the ground. As a matter of fact, and actually better color for hiding on a carrier deck, the color dark blue is never mentioned at all in any of the specifications, and yet it was standardized. Fully 1/3 of all the paint, of all the upper surface camouflage paint sent to the South Pacific in 1943 was dark blue. They're loading up the place with all this dark blue paint and never mentioning it. They finally, in December 1943, decide to issue a new order, and the order says several things. Number one, the upper surface color of all airplanes will be blue-gray. The undersurface colors of all airplanes will be white, and the color blue-gray will be matched to dark blue. So instead of actually saying we're using dark blue, they use dark blue, but they call it blue-gray. So all of the subsequent reports that tell you blue-gray are actually talking about dark blue.
Oh.
Go ahead, Art. You've had something for a while.
One of the peculiarities in the film is it's pretty clear that Warner Brothers and Technicolor got caught in the midst of paint color change. But I would note the beautiful and spectacular material of Vindicators, which have been partially repainted so they are carrying the properly left upper, right undersurface U.S. roundels or U.S. markings, yet they're still carrying the chrome yellow and silver schemes.
Indeed.
I've actually built a model based on that.
The other important thing you'll see on the Vindicators is that part of the plot has to do with three buddies who are all great naval aviators, and they have one common enemy, which is Errol Flynn. But they all, well, he gets all the girls, and he starts off from money. But anyway, the three heroes all are member of the Top Hat Squadron, okay? So they've all got cigarette lighters with top hats on them. However, by the time they're filming the movie, the top hats have been transferred to the Atlantic. And so they're stuck with the Panther Squadron in the Vindicators. The only dive bombers they have are the Panther Squadron. So if you look really closely at the close-ups when they're showing these SB2Us, you can see where they painted over the Panther with aluminum paint and put a top hat on the side of the airplane. And several months later, both squadrons get transferred over to the Atlantic, and they actually do exchange the unit insignia for the two units. VB4 becomes VB3 and vice versa, and they actually do exchange the insignia that are there. The top hats become the Panthers become the top hats and everything. So yeah, great movie. Gangs of fun to just sit there and make sure you don't drool over your remote or you will short it all out and there's no telling what will happen.
Yep. Dana, real quick, you just mentioned about the white undersides and the darker upper sides. Does that sort of lead to the fact that the Atlantic scheme was actually probably closer to what should have been used, except it was a gray versus a blue?
Well, yeah, you'll note one of the things that comes up from the reports, I had to make this fairly short when I did the presentation, is they're painting all these different versions of purple blue, very pale purple blue underneath, very pale light gray underneath. And every time they get cited by a different ship, the same report comes back. It doesn't help. It doesn't make any difference. Nothing. The only reason we could tell this airplane was supposed to be camouflaged was we could see it didn't have a red tail. So all the undersurface colors fail miserably. And when they do the final report from BuAer and Naval Research Lab, the report says light gray or light purple blue is the best camouflage for undersurface colors. Despite all the evidence to the contrary, they've gone with this color scheme. The one person that knew better was Dayton Brown, and he of course uses it in his Seagull scheme. But even there, you have to realize for most of us, what we call the Atlantic scheme was not the Atlantic scheme, okay? It was the anti-sub camouflage. It's just that nearly all the anti-submarine airplanes were in the Atlantic. The first Navy anti-submarine camouflage scheme was actually, and this is Navy camouflage as opposed to borrowing somebody else's, is developed at North Island, and it is dark blue on top, light gray on the sides, and white on the bottom. And this is developed in mid-1942. It sees very little use, but it is the standard. So when we run into these really odd painted PB4Ys in 1942 and 1943, it's a good guess that's what they're painted. It's just we don't have proof. And again, just as they're getting ready to put all of this into SR2 and SR15, the Navy regulations, that's when the Anti-Submarine Scheme 1 and Anti-Submarine Scheme 2 are developed. And there is evidence that some of those anti-submarine aircraft were actually painted that way in Hawaii and on the Pacific West Coast. So I'd love to have a walk around of one of those airplanes to prove that's what we're looking at. The first chapter I decided to write for this book, I wanted to start off easy just to get back to writing. And so I chose to write the anti-submarine warfare chapter. That was a mistake. It took me 4 months to get through just what they were thinking, with all the weird arguments and people saying this is best and that's best and here's what we want, until they finally came up with a final scheme, which was the dark gold gray, light gold gray, white variations. So, but again, cool stuff. Who else has a question? Say what, Art?
When do you expect to be able to publish?
I expect to be able to publish 6 months ago. Have I mentioned writer's block has set in? I am having a lot of trouble writing right now. I stopped going to the archives in late January, early February, with a plan to spend 2 or 3 months in the basement here. Welcome to my basement, doing nothing but writing. Then go back to the archives to find some of the missing stuff that I knew was waiting for me, and continue writing. Well, instead, I've been stuck here in the basement. You never know you get cabin fever until you can't go out. And I've got some real cabin fever. The other problem is trying to just make sense of all the documents I've got. What I showed you tonight is the reduced version of what happened. What you're not seeing much of, at least, is all the different people going their own direction at the same time, issuing different orders of what is supposed to be the standard, and finally coming together for a standard that shows up in the regulations. That I have to do. In a book, you have to put that in. In a talk, you kind of gloss it over. I'm good. Anyone else? You want to hear the Moss story?
Sure.
Yes.
I wish Jim was here. Art, pass it on, or I'll pass it on. We'll get Jim involved somehow. At a NoRISCon several years ago in the, I think it was 1978 or maybe 79.
Yeah, several would cover that.
He who loves the Brewster Buffalo above all else, except his wife, decided to give an award at a NoRISCon for the best Brewster Buffalo model. Well, right at this occasion, Bob Cressman showed me the first pictures to come out of the Barkley camouflage Brewster Buffalo. And I knew I had to enter the contest. So I spent 4 months building a Brewster Buffalo, Tamiya Brewster Buffalo, with the best I understood the colors to be. I'll be right there.
Trust me, it was memorable then. It will be memorable now.
I believed it looked a lot like this.
Yes,
Okay, I
sure.
thought there was more green involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I put the whole thing together, painted up in the scheme, and drove up to, I believe, Syracuse. It might have been Binghamton, but somewhere in New York, in the free state of New York, and waited until Moss left the contest room and put the Buffalo down in the category for Best Brewster Buffalo. And of course, I knew that if I put my name on the form, he'd come and pester me to know all about it. Well, that's no fun. So I wrote my name down as D. Moore McMillan. D for my first name, Dana. Moore, my middle name, and McMillan being the Bell family clan. And left it there. Well, a little while later, Jim comes into the room and he looks across and he sees there's another Brewster Buffalo. And from across the room, he says, nah, no. Then he goes walking across the room and he gets closer and he starts seeing this ugly piece of crap. And he gets closer and closer and closer. And finally, no. And he pulls up the sheet, and he yells as loud as he can, "Is there a D. Moore McMillan in the room?" Well, on top of everything else, I was living down here, DC chapter at the time. So I couldn't put DC chapter. We put down Brooklyn chapter, and we got Joe
Turner.
Joe Turner.
Joe Turner?
God rest his
God
soul.
bless him.
God
We got
bless him.
Joe Turner involved and said, Joe, we need to use a chapter. And so Jim races off to find Joe Turner. Well, Joe had made a couple of changes to who D. Moore McMillan was. Number one, he was just over 6 foot tall, and he was an African American. You can't miss him. All right. So Moss is out of the room, and I take the 3 pictures of the actual Brewster Buffalo. As soon as Moss has left the contest room, I go over and I put them. Now you have to realize, on a joke like this, you only do it to a friend who appreciates a good joke. And Moss, God bless him, doesn't mind being the victim of a good joke. So I put the 3 pictures down next to it, and Moss comes back in. Now for the rest, this is Friday night. Until sometime Sunday morning, every time Jim Moss sat down to get a bite to eat, or sat down for whatever, or was off having a conversation, somebody would come and say, "Hey, Jim, over in the contest room, there's some big black guy named McMillan looking for you. He wants to talk to you about this scheme." I don't think Jim managed to finish a meal. I think people would wait until the waitress would put a plate in front of him to come by and say, "Hey, Moss, have you seen this guy McMillan? He's over in the vendor room. He's got some stuff for you on the Brewster Buffalo." And so to this day, when Jim was told, obviously, just before the awards were given out, who D. McMillan really was. But to this day, he has to mention D. McMillan anytime we're talking or emailing each other. And that is the story of Jim Moss and the Barkley camouflage scheme.
Kind of like the Captain Tuttle episode from MASH.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of that story. I see that we are past 9 o'clock and all good children need to be in bed at this moment.
Thank you very much, Dana.
Thank you, Dana.
Pass the meeting.
Dana, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I enjoyed it a great deal.
Good.
Thanks for putting up with it.
Very good.
Nice job. Hey, John, I've got a quick announcement before we get to Walter with the contest results. So, guys, especially those of you based in Northern Virginia, kind of in the area, Piper Hobby closed down 3 years ago. Hobby Hanger in Chantilly is holding a sidewalk sale this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They'll have Samaya, Hasegawa, Eduard, Fine Molds, Trumpeter. The reason for the sale is that Hobby Hanger is changing owners.
Yeah.
Apparently the new owner is willing to carry models and paint and supplies and things, but the mix will probably change, so they're looking to clear out some stock. So this Saturday, Hobby Hanger, Chantilly, Virginia, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. There'll be 2 tables outside as well as, I guess, additional sales inside. So just want to make y'all aware of that. And I'll put this up on Google Groups as well.
Thank you.
Good. Put the address, Chris.
Okay. All right, John, over to you. Wrap up.
Dana, thank you very much. As always, it was a pleasure, and we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Walter.
Dana.
I'm here, Dana. Nice job.
Walter, you still there?
I'm here.
All right. You want to go ahead and lead us through the contest, please?
Oh, yeah. Okay, come on, machine. There you go. 70 scale and smaller. Second place, S2 Tracker by John Lingwood out of our UK branch.
Ooh.
Nice.
First place goes to the C54G. Alex Sack.
That was nice.
Very nice.
Indeed.
Way to go, Alex.
48th and larger. Second place, F4U Corsair, Wes Schull.
Oh,
Very nice.
what one?
First place, DO335A12, David Koch from the UK chapter.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
148 or
48.
148.
Nice.
Yeah.
Emmy.
35th and larger armor. Second place, Panzer by Colin Tetsuko. First, a little battery. Panther A, William Chadwell.
Yeah, it was nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that looks like a Panther A.
76 scale and smaller armor. We had one entry.
It won.
200, Greg Richard.
Oh.
Chips, second place. The I-53 with mini subs, Greg Richard.
Oh, Oh,
Oh,
Okay, cool.
Oh, Lindbergh kit.
What scale is that?
72nd.
70, so that's a
No.
big one.
Wow.
First place goes to HMS Ajax
Yes.
by John Lingwood from the UK.
Very nice.
Oh,
That's 1/600th scale, by the way.
Wow.
must be the old Airfix kit.
It is, with a lot of rework.
Yeah.
Lots.
oops.
And it's gone.
I think we may have lost Walter. He did say, I thought he mentioned there they had a low battery.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he's probably
Gone for the night.
Who we
Yeah,
move,
he-
John?
Yeah, he probably is gone. So we'll get the presentation posted to Google Groups, and then maybe the website as well. But definitely we'll get everybody recognized for the contest awards. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I just want to make one observation on the contest this month also. I don't know how long I spent in there. It was really, really tough. There were some really, really nice kits. You guys are really up in the game on this. I was very, very impressed with everything I saw there this month. So keep it up. Maybe, there is a silver lining to the quarantine because I was just blown away this month.
Hey guys, I can tell you what the best show was. I judged it if you're interested.
Sure.
Please.
C-54.
Excellent.
Yes.
Alex, that was a beautiful build.
Congrats, Alex.
Well done.
I'm really, really flattered. Thank you so much.
Bravo.
When I saw the pilot in that window, I said, "Holy mackerel!"
Alex, this is Bill. If you'll drop me a note, I want you to send those photos off to Volker Volley in Germany, who's the Revell product manager that put that project together.
Oh, happy to do so, Bill. I'll send you a note.
Okay.
I was just going to ask. That's the Revell kit.
That is Revell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I built that as well. It's a freaking great kit.
I remember your construction, and you gave me some advice. Use the metal landing gear, and that's what I used.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I did talk to you about that.
By the way, Dana, did that Buffalo win?
It did, yes.
How could it not?
Oh, hey, we got Walter. We got Walter coming back in.
Okay.
Let's see, Walter, where are you?
Sorry about that. My battery shut down on me. Lost power.
No problem. Hey, Walter.
Yeah.
So Jim went ahead and announced the best of show as the C-54G. Just a heads up.
Well.
Yeah, I know.
We weren't sure if we'd get you back.
So,
Well, let me just. Okay, because C-54G is not what I had as.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
La La Land.
Walter, check your email.
La La Land.
I checked my email, but it was after we had made the selections again. So.
Take it
Go
to
back.
Florida to court.
Go back to the presentation, Walter.
Hello, Mike.
Okay, this is where I left off.
I don't see it.
Give me a moment. Here's the Ajax.
Still don't see it.
Nope.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Does he have privileges to share a screen?
yes, he does.
Okay, hang on here. What's going on?
Tell those hamsters to run a little faster.
Working on it.
we go.
There we go.
Hey, all
All
right.
right. Wait a minute, that's my computer.
Okay, second place is the RN5 by Greg Richard. First place, Subaru 360, Nick Polomeni. That's a quarter next to it.
I was gonna say that thing's tiny.
Holy mackerel.
Boy.
Was that 144th?
148.
Jeez.
130,
My
132.
God.
Gee,
one
that's neat. That's really neat.
That'll hurt your kneecaps trying to get into that thing.
I like silly little
What
cars.
year was the car? Anybody know?
Let's say it's early 60s.
I was gonna say 60 something.
Yeah, it's very early 60s.
Very early.
62, 63.
Came with auxiliary foot pedals to power.
The Flintstone car.
I believe the 360 refers to the engine displacement in CCs.
Is that
It was a whole 360.
ounces or cubic centimeters?
Yeah, CCs.
Yeah, I was gonna say 360 cc's ain't much.
Early lawnmower.
Yeah, Sci-Fi, first place, the Gundam by Peter Espada.
Cool. Cool.
Nice.
You know, I think I dated her in high school.
She didn't like you.
Second
I said
place.
I was into a more, and she thought I meant armor. It was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
Flak 37 crew, Peter Espada.
Yeah, that was nice.
Nice.
Nice job on the figures. Yeah.
Yeah.
First place, the Albertosaurus, Karen Cope.
I did date her.
That is awesome.
Yeah, the paint work on that was amazing. The shading and everything, that was really, really nice.
Yeah.
Really does look nice.
Masters, second place, AN225, Tim Barb.
Hey.
Oh.
Whoa, huge.
That thing is huge, by the way.
Doesn't even fit on the screen.
No.
First place, Maki 205, Kevin Bailey.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Very nice.
That's nice.
RSI.
Out of box, Spitfire Mark 7, Colin Tetsuko.
Wow.
Ready?
Yeah, that
Really
was
nice.
nice.
Oh, boy.
What scale?
48.
Order scale.
That's the Airfix.
Probably the
kit.
Airfix kit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, best of show.
What
Jim really sent me something, but I didn't get it till after I'd already put this thing together. So, sorry, Jim.
Hey.
I
Oh,
literally just
okay.
your email.
Why don't you issue dueling best of shows, because I just checked my in-mail, my sent mail folder, and I sent the contest result to you on Monday and then again on Wednesday.
Okay, 'cause I didn't get either one until about 6:30 on today.
Okay.
So I can arrange something for best of show on that one. I'll arrange.
All right.
You'll see new. I'll update the results and send them out with tomorrow's load.
So Walter, who is the best to show from the website? 119?
Oh, that's, yes.
Oh.
That was
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes.
Really nice.
I'm in Crane, David Hoffman.
Okay, thanks.
And that's it for me, folks. Sorry for the delay. Literally my power went out. My battery up.
Yeah, sure.
Well done for all.
I tell you
Okay,
what,
well-
both of those are deserving of best of show. They both deserve it. So.
How about a tie?
Yeah, I give them, do them both. I mean, they're
How about
both.
a
I can take care of that.
Yeah, let's do a tie.
I do them both. That works.
Because that thing, that is awesome. That just
so-
wow.
So best of
I
show.
agree to that.
Yeah, I'm
And
fine
the
with that. I'll
ship,
stick that up.
The ship too was outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't have 10 best of shows.
No.
Oh, but
No, I'm just
No,
saying,
no.
these two,
I'm willing,
you know.
I'm willing to do a tie between the Decurion and the C-54. I'm willing to do a tie for that one. I can arrange that. That's easy enough to do.
Yes.
Yeah, but it does tell you what John mentioned just a few minutes ago, the quality of the work that we're seeing on this virtual table. I mean, you guys are just doing amazing work. It really is fantastic.
The UK chapter of Zoom meeting is tomorrow. They're going to get a tickle out of this.
Oh, yeah.
8 awards in our contest.
We're going to start charging them.
I missed 2 months in a row, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, we need to limit their participation, damn it. No.
I'm having a hard time building because their stuff is so good.
Invoke the Monroe Doctrine.
All, you know.
Yeah, there you go. Damn.
Invoke the Monroe Doctrine.
They've been locked down longer.
This was Northern Virginia IPMS.
Well,
Thank
we
you all.
we got Florida, we get the UK, we get everybody.
Yeah, tell them
Thank
they
you,
got to
Walter.
be signed into the meeting.
Oh, you know
too.
what? That tells you how good our club is.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. Yeah, we welcome everyone, to participate. So,
Thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you.
that's the way we've
Hey.
always operated, and that's the way we intend to continue to operate. So, welcome to everybody. With the more participation we get, the better off and the stronger we are as a community. So,
All right.
Good.
so I guess before we adjourn, I'm going to go out one more time to the membership. Anyone got any last nickels they want to?
Oh, since I was late, and I don't know if you guys discussed it, did we come up with anything for the Discord?
No, we're still working on that.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to do is, again, just thank Dana for that wonderful presentation. And
Yes. Second.
I agree.
you know,
That was good.
we're truly,
Yeah.
we're truly
Very
blessed to have this kind of expertise in our club. You know, to have a world-renowned expert on this subject, to be able to, yeah, it's you, it is you.
There's a tall black guy standing behind you, Dana.
Really,
I'll say, where's the tall black guy?
Does that description ring a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dana, I know that we, talked to you last year about it, but we really appreciate it. You've been stepping up for longer than most of us can remember and supporting the club. And you have really, surpassed what anyone could have expected. So, I echo everything that's been said. I think everybody in the club just really relishes the month when you present for us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And
You're my club, you're my guys. I'm glad every now and then I get to help out, but it's just nice to be around you. So thank you for letting me be part of it.
Be cool.
And it's always good when anybody can sit there and give me ammo for those people that go, you did the wrong color. No. No, I did not.
No, the Navy picked the wrong color. Yeah.
Years and years ago, Mike Lyons, who's one of the founding members of these clubs, was a technician at the Air and Space Museum, and he was working on things like the ME-262 and things like that, and the Arado. He ran into a guy at an Oriscon who gave him a hard time because a model of the F-100 that he'd painted the inside of the slats red. And this character comes up and says, that's wrong. And Mike said, well, I think it's right. And he said, no, it's wrong. They never painted red on the interior of the slats on the F-100. At which point Mike told him, well, I work at the Air and Space Museum on this airplane, and I assure you it has red slats. This guy still wouldn't accept that. So what we were going to do was go home, and Mike won an award at that show. We were going to paste a little decal of IPMS on the sill of the F-100, take a photograph of it, add the decal to the F-100, the real one, take a decal of it, and then add it to Mike's model. Bring it to the next meeting, and that same jackass will come up and say, wait a minute, that can't be right. there are no IPMS markings on F-100s. And then Mike would pull out the photograph and say, what about this one? Until he wound up with a row of 3 or 4 IPMS markings on the canopy railing of the F-100. We didn't leave them on permanently because that Mike couldn't abide. But a water-based decal didn't do any harm. But this jackass couldn't figure out how come this airplane, every time he saw it, was growing another IPMS logo.
No, and I've had people try and tell me about what the colors on a 141 are supposed to be, and I'm going, I flew on them. How are you going to stand here and tell me what it's supposed to be and not be? And it's a modern plane. It just drives me nuts when people do that.
Serious note. I went to my first IPMS meeting in Germany when I was stationed there, and I drove an hour to get to this place. And I walked in, and there were all these models on the table, and I said, "Boy, this is home. I love this. This is great." And that's the last time I went to an IPMS meeting for 5 years. And the reason for it was that I stood there and listened to in an hour and a half these guys angrily arguing with each other over what Sky Type S looks like. Figured, this is not the place for me. And one of the best things about these 2 clubs, Northern Virginia and DC, is that we don't abide that kind of silliness.
Yeah. I got a quick anecdote. I remember several years ago.
Guys, sorry, we got to wrap up in like 1 minute,
right.
so make it quick, William. Thank you.
Quick anecdote. One of the nationals several years ago at a judges meeting, somebody started questioning whether we should be too obsessed over color accuracy. And Walt Fink, in his usual authoritative way, warned everybody against falling into that trap. And as an example, pointed out that in all of his 18 years in the United States Navy, he never once saw 2 U.S. Navy ships berthed side by side that were decked out in the exact same shade of light gray.
Exactly.
And I have never forgotten that anecdote, and I have related it to several times over the years to various people, but I've never forgotten that.
Several dozen, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's a good anecdote. It's something to remember.
Too. I think
something
I heard
to remember
at the judges meeting as well. Yeah. So that's a good point.
Thanks,
okay,
Chris.
Guys, we got to wrap up. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Next month.
Good night.
Bye, Dana.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Dana.
Have a good weekend, folks.